Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. On the show today, it's a Christmas special, or just a winter special if you don't celebrate. Either way, we're back one last time in 2022, and it feels like it's been a while. I even had to remind myself of Keith's last name. Anyway, on the show today, the latest off-season happenings, our very own Crash Podcast Awards, your final questions of 2022 answered, and what we want to see for 2023. The recording date is Tuesday, 20th of December. My name is Harry Benjamin. Joining me as ever is Crash's MotoGP editor Pete McLaren and former Grand Prix rider and British champion Keith Hewin. But before anything, we want to do a little poll, a bit of audience feedback, actually. I've been instructed to do this by the higher-ups. Now, we've had a great year. Thank you so much. That's all down to you guys who listen and watch us. Now, would you be interested? Let us know in the comments or tweet us. If we were to do a live show, would you be interested in coming along? Would you be interested? How would you want it to sound? Would you want to be there in person? Would you like to have a ticket for it? We would like some feedback on that. So let us know. A live show, it's in the mumblings in the background, nothing confirmed, but I think we'd all be up for it. Would you guys want to do a live show? Yeah, thumbs up all round. Okay. And the other one is, now we're called the Crash MotoGP podcast. Should we actually have a name? Or is it a bit late? Should we have a name or keep it as the Crash MotoGP podcast? So 2023 idea, let us know. Something fun. I'd name suggestions and we'll see if it's worth doing. Now, okay, that's the admin out of the way. Let's get on. We've got lots of things to talk about. There's been actually quite a lot of news over the last month or so. It's hard to keep up. But the first thing I wanted to come on to, and Pete, maybe it's worth just coming to you on this first, because you've spoken about it a lot, these accident systems that are being put in place and safety procedures. And we do have this new accident detection and rider warning system, which should be coming into place for 2023. It's now been explained as to exactly how it will work. Can you tell us how it will work?
Yeah, so I got hold of Corrado Cecchinelli, the MotoGP director of technology, to just sort of, we've spoken about it a lot on this show, haven't we, of how it might work and what the ideas might be. And so I spoke to Corrado, who's, sort of oversees all these kind of technical side things he works for Dorna, he oversees all of that. So yeah, he gave a rundown. He put the pieces together, let's say. And the basics of the system are, you've got a bit like an airbag. You've got these sensors, the software, if you like, the hardware that will detect riders falling over. It then sends a signal back. I think they're going to use the timekeeping system. That actually involves quite a big change to timekeeping, because previously they just had to go over a timing loop every so often around the lap. This obviously has to be continuous, real time data going back and forth, because then the information then comes back and it triggers off a warning. Now, Keith was quite good on this. He was speaking about all of the potential things that you could warn a rider, all the different ways that you might choose to do it. And Corrado is really keen on some of these sort of quite futuristic possibilities of, heads-up displays, noises in the ear, everything. But to start with, it will just be this flashing rain light, which we've seen tested already. But that's sort of the first step. And he said, made very clear, that's the first stage. So that will be, get the system up and running, show that it works. So that will be the flashing rear light will be on the fallen rider's bike and also the other bikes in what they call the danger zone. So that means near the scene of an accident. Now, to start with, because it won't be too refined, you'll get a lot of warnings on a lot of bikes that maybe are not needed. The guy who fell off might be in the gravel trap, nowhere near the racetrack. So it'll be overly safe, if you like, but obviously that's preferable to it being the other way. So that's how it will start. And then really the exciting bit is, where will they go from this in terms of the future warnings and the ways that they can sort of prevent, incidents of riders on the floor being hit?
My worry, as always the case, motorbike racers don't take much notice of yellow flags and waved things and lights and all the rest of it. So we are into a new penalty regime coming this way as well once we get this up and running, because what if a rider takes advantage in that situation, doesn't roll it off in a he's going to gain a second or two, which is gold nowadays in racing motorbikes because it's so close. So we're into an area really that I'm pleased that Dorna are going softly with this, and I think it's I'm not poo-pooing the system, because it sounds like it's going to be brilliant, but it's how they manage that's going to be the detail. how they manage a rider that's taken advantage. What is deemed to be an advantage. Did he roll it off early enough? Was he a little bit late off the throttle? Like there's going to be things like that that are going to come in, and there's going to be protests all over the bloody place. It's going to be very difficult to manage, but safety is paramount. And if Dorna have gone this far technically, then you can be fairly sure that it is going to fully launch during the course of the year.
Well, if they've got to be, if people are going to take advantage of this, do you think penalties are just going to be more harsh, more strict? We're already talking about cancelled laps for next year, and having more penalties and more strictness in place on those things. Will they just, if they break the rules, they'll just be punished for it, and that will hopefully deter them?
It's how they manage it that's going to be my worry. How do you manage in an area that you don't have line under the road, for instance? Who gained how much space? A yard, 2 yards, maybe nothing. It's going to be. You can't really do it visually from cameras and CCTV. I wouldn't have said. I know that we had that with the green paintwork, and then they obviously put sensors in the green paintwork. So if you ran off the track, that automatically triggered things. But I don't know. I'm waiting to see the next draft of detail, because it kind of concerns me very slightly that riders will try and take advantage. How many times have we had Moto3 riders penalised? How many times have we had Moto3 riders taking advantage in qualifying, hanging around, dawdling? You can't beat it into them. If you cut a finger off every time they did it, they'd still do it with no fingers on a wrist. So it's kind of it's very difficult, and I appreciate this from a rider perspective when your mind is absolutely tuned into that thousandth of a second. I don't think anybody doesn't race a car, a motorbike, or anything like that where time counts absolutely. Just how you are in the zone. It will be interesting to see whether a flashing red light on the back of a bike slows you up at all. We'll see. Good idea, but I still want to see the detail.
I suspect it'll be linked in with the yellow flag. So if you can't pass under wave yellow flags now, where you get penalised, and obviously in qualifying your lap time gets cancelled, doesn't it? If you go through a yellow flag sector, you're losing your lap anyway. So I think in that sense, it'll be. But in a race, of course, there will be a chance to gain ground. As long as you don't overtake, you could certainly gain ground in a race situation.
Exactly that. That's the bit that concerns me slightly, in that you can make a couple of yards that you wouldn't be able to make any other way. So we'll see. But I know Dorna are across it. I mean, Corrado does a bloody good job. I mean, they really are. Everybody bleats and shouts and screams, about the injuries that we're getting. Because the racing is so good, we are getting more injuries. That isn't a good thing. Everybody wants to see really, really close racing. Everybody wants to see everybody bloody passing and banging bearings and God knows what. But of course, as soon as you do that across a field of 30 bikes, you're into a danger zone. There's no doubt about it. So whatever you can do to try and minimise that is going to be a plus point.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that is, as you say, all crucially managed. But it's good to see that being implemented for 2023, and also crucially that something that can be applicable at all levels, all the way to Talent Cup, is quite important. I think that they've introduced that for. I mentioned there about the cancellation of laps for breaching MotoGP tyre pressures. Tyre pressures was a big talking point this year, and that has now been confirmed that any offending riders will be stripped of their fast laps in 2023. So they're going to be hot on it next year.
Well, they didn't have unified software. The big problem was that everybody was running a different software for measuring stuff. And we had an advisory sheet. If you remember, Matt Oxley put it out there and caused an almighty stink because somebody gave him a sheet of it was an advisory thing. Everybody filled it in judiciously, or whatever the word is I'm looking for. But and basically, you suddenly saw that some of the riders were under the minimum pressure. But now there is a unified across the board software situation. Can't be cheated, can't be messed around with. If you are under the pressure for a certain amount of time in a race, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, that's the difficulty, isn't it, with tyre pressures? It's not like if you're underweight, it's easy, isn't it? You put the bike on the scales, you're underweight, that's it, you're penalised. With tyre pressure, because it goes up and down so often, it's really difficult. So now it's super accurate to measure, but at the same time, they've got to put this sort of tolerance in place of a certain number of laps, because otherwise you could be a guy in the lead and suddenly you're disqualified because your team expected you to be behind 8 riders and have your tire temperature much higher. So
That's the point
it's
to
a
make,
really
Pete.
it's a difficult one to balance, isn't it?
Yeah,
But
I mean,
this is how they're going to do it. And yeah,
if you qualify badly and you're in mid-pack, then the chances are you'll run a softer tyre pressure because you are in the heat of the guys in front of you. If you're out front in fresh air, then your tyre pressure becomes more stable in where you've set it. So techs and the like will adjust their tyre pressure depending on where they think you're going to be. So if you suddenly come up with a Suzuki and Rins and clear off in the distance, and you've set the tyre pressure to where you think you might have finished, and of course, what happens is, just to explain about tyre pressures and the difference it makes from a motorbike racing feel, if that tyre pressure goes up, above the minimum, the tyre starts to balloon. It doesn't squidge into the track. So the hotter it gets, obviously, the more it expands, and therefore you get a less contact patch. So you're looking to try and run it as soft as you can run it, so the thing squidges into the deck and gives you that corner entry that you want. Mostly the front tyre, obviously, is the critical one for motorbike racers. Particularly now that you're approaching the corners at such a rate of knots with ride height adjusters. I'm sure we'll get there in a minute. But you're getting out of corners so quick, so you're pulling more mile an hour down the straight. You are getting into a corner much faster than you ever have done, and the aero has affected the fact that we didn't have as much passing as we've had in previous times as well. So there's a lot going on a motorbike nowadays. It is not racing a motorbike like it was.
Do you think next year is going to be better in terms of racing? Because 2021, right, was awesome. I think we all said that the racing was brilliant. There was so many overtakes. In 2022, I think we can all agree that was less so, but there were still a few standout races. What's being done? What do you think can be done for 2023 to try and recapture what we had in 21?
Well, we're losing the ride height adjuster at the front, aren't we? That's going. For me, I don't know why they're bothering to still have the back one on there either. I mean, this is not something that's going to transfer to road bikes. I don't really understand that. Technology moving across the road machinery, I suppose we can understand to extent. Although we're in a prototype situation, does a Formula One car represent a road car? No, bloody don't. So does a MotoGP bike represent a road bike? No, it doesn't. So we're in a situation where I don't like rules against technology. I find it difficult. And this is going to be critical. Sorry, Mike Trimby. Sorry, Danny Aldridge. But these things should have been seen before they came. You need a bigger technical department that is across what's happening behind the scenes. And as soon as Ducati, we'll use them because they're the innovators of a spaceship. As soon as they come to Danny Aldridge and say, "Well, we're looking at doing this," I think he should have turned around and said, "No, you're not." I always remember the comment when seamless gearboxes came. They said seamless gearboxes, we wouldn't have had them if we'd had our way, because the cost involved in everybody catching up with seamless gearboxes was massive. But seamless gearboxes, now I can understand where that is a proper road use. Sorry to keep harping on about road bikes and the like, but a seamless gearbox is a beautiful piece of, it's like a timepiece. It's a fantastic thing. So fantastic that you will never ever see it. Like I've been trying to look at one. I've been trying to get in the garage and look at one for ages. I remember asking Cal Crusoe, "Come on, sneak me in." He said, "I've never seen it." It's one of those situations where they are so technically innovative that you just don't get to see them. There's one man that Mark Lloyd, pup. He was a gearbox man for Repsol, and he went across to KTM. His knowledge would have been bloody huge. And very, very powerful knowledge that he had. And you have to buy those people to move it across and make it work. But getting back to what you said, will it be better racing next year? Do you know, I feel like we're going to have a transition year next year. With the innovation regarding the crash situation, the losing the, it's all very well losing a piece of technology like the ride height adjuster at the front. But that's going to throw the whole balance of the bike out. It's going to throw the whole setup of the bike out. It's going to throw all their data is going to be different now. It's like when Quartararo went back to the standard aero, and he went backwards because they've moved all the settings on to suit the new aero. Once you've moved everything on technically, to go back is actually quite hard as it is to find a way forward sometimes. So it'll be an interesting year next year. But as soon as you take a big chunk like that out of the bike, it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, I think for Fabio and the guys at the factory Ducati team, they were lucky, weren't they? Because they kind of left the front ride height development side to the Pramac guys. So it was Zarco and Jorge Martin who were running this during testing and I think the early part of the season. Whereas they were kind of like, you know what, guys, you tell us when it's working perfectly, and then we'll put it on our bike. And then, of course, it gets banned halfway through the year. So those guys spent all that sort of time sacrificing valuable laps in Grand Prix weekends, you might say, to try and get this front system working. I mean, Martin complained quite a lot of not having the same feeling with the front in general. That seemed to be where he found his form later in the year, with some sort of suspension change there. But yeah, so they spent time on it. And I don't know if the other manufacturers did. I don't know. But certainly, the Pramac guys at the Sepang test onwards, they were testing it, weren't they? The front ride height system. And yeah, I think in the end, they just, well, obviously, once they realized it wasn't going to be around for next year, there was no point pursuing it, really. So, yeah. Will it change? Other than that, I don't think there's much changing. I think in terms of the technical rules, that there's no real big shake-up for next year. Everything is kind of, we say this all the time, don't we? But the rules are made by the manufacturers. They all agree stuff, and then it's up to the FIM side to police it. So this is why with the tire pressures, I said to Corrado, well, why don't you just stick a tire gauge in it? And he said, yeah, that's what I'd love to do, but it's not what the manufacturers would agree to. So he said some of them would, but not all of them, and you need all of them to agree. So that's why they're in this situation with the complicated real-time tire pressure thing, because you need the manufacturers to agree. So I think on the technical side, we have to sort of remember that it's up to the manufacturers to really get this sorted out, and it's sometimes those guys that miss the loopholes as much as those policing it, shall we say?
I still think that that unanimous decision on bits and pieces is not correct, because Ducati have been penalised for the amount of money and technology they put into it. You imagine saying to Ferrari, I like you as a car man, I can always bounce off you for that, Harry. You imagine Ferrari being told that they can't run that wing, having developed it for the last bloody 6 months in the tunnel and spent God knows how many millions of pounds on it, or whatever it would be. I think, again, technology is something, I think that IRTA, Danny Aldridge, should be part of the manufacturers. He should have a right of veto, is my view. I think that it's all very well the manufacturers clubbing together to ban Ducati's ride height adjustment. I kind of find that not quite as edifying, I think, as if we had a technical director that was part of that group. I mean, it would be huge pressure. I mean, Danny would be under so much pressure in that situation, because he'd be lobbied behind the vans, lobbied in the toilets, lobbied in bloody everywhere he goes. And that's my argument is that they're a very small team, technical, very small team. They lost Gary McLaren, on Moto3 and Moto2 when Gary was killed in Thailand 2 or 3 years ago. They've obviously caught up again technical wise, but you can't beat that kind of experience, that kind of person that's embedded and can see stuff coming. Should the manufacturers have that gold card to do whatever they want to do? Probably, because they know best. But I still think there should be a right of veto from our technical department in MotoGP.
I think they are looking to get this rear ride height system removed within the next few years. I think it is a matter of the time frame on it. I think, as Keith explained, this isn't something they expected to happen. It's happened. They know that you can't just suddenly whip the carpet away from a manufacturer that spent a lot of time, money, and effort developing something, and everyone's got it now. So, I think they're normally 5-year sort of cycles, aren't they? The rules, they fit in with the contracts, with everything. We spoke a lot about the 5-year contracts with Suzuki, didn't we? So I think the next 5-year cycle, I think 27 or something, or 26, that'll be quite a big change for the technical rules. I think that's where we'll see quite a big shake-up. But until then, it's really just fine-tuning things, because they don't want to. The last thing manufacturers like is a big shock in terms of the technical rules, isn't it? Especially in these sort of times of budget constraints and everything else. They like to know where they stand and what they're going to spend money on.
Getting back to what you said, Harry, right at the beginning of this, where it's going to be interesting next year, going back to the original question, is whether KTM and Aprilia can keep momentum going technically throughout next year. KTM didn't lose their way, because they were all everyone's within a second now of the 24 bikes on the grid, so that ain't bad. But the point being is that KTM have fallen back a little bit last year. So I'm looking to see what they're going to be doing for next year. It'll be very interesting to see where they're going to pick up the pace.
And I suppose Aprilia tailed off, didn't they, towards the end of this season? So hoping that they can sort of get their heads together a little bit more, and now that they're maybe a year used to suddenly being up at the front, can carry that forward and recapture what they had towards the mid-season. Because you mentioned the Ferrari thing, I did just want to bounce off of that, because I think it would be good to get Danny, because we had Danny Aldridge on the show already, didn't we, last year? Or was it this year? I can't remember now. So maybe we should get him back in the new year just to preview things with us before we get stuck in.
Danny's a really good guy. I mean, Danny
Mm.
Aldridge, son of Colin Aldridge, who was a sponsor in British bikes for years and years and years, some Grand Prix bikes as well, if I remember rightly, with Colin. Colin sadly died when he was 55 of cancer. Great guy. And as is usually the thing, he's fairly well embedded. He was best mates of Mike Trimby's. As it turns out. They were golfing partners. You know a bit about
Of
golfing,
course.
didn't you, Harry?
I love a bit of golf.
So yeah, I mean, it's our paddock is embedded. You know, everybody is part of it. We're all in there. I mean, Pete, it's quite funny. As you might guess from a t-shirt and the fact it's dark outside, I'm not in the UK at the moment. And I met up with a mate of mine, and he's a car man, and he'd never done the media scrums, and I always get him something so he can get into media centre and the like, and he was just amazed at how the access where everybody does a media scrum, everybody's around the riders, and he said, I just went there with my notepad and wrote things down. I hope we don't lose that. Motorbike racing is so accessible, but the point being is that it's going to be a tricky year next year, because like Pete's already said, there aren't that many innovations you can make. You've got to make good what you've got. And it's who finds those tiny, tiny little nuances of performance after they've spent all winter poring over data and I mean, it would send you insane, wouldn't it? The amount of computer time you'd have trying to work all these little things out. And then you get a second opinion and a third opinion of someone as they come in and take a look at what's going on. It's wonderful, but it also is very boring.
Very boring. But I suppose for the idea of sort of trying to get the technical side more dredged with the teams and the manufacturers building. I take a Formula One example because you mentioned Ferrari. I think at the start of this year, the Mercedes team came with this brand new concept. They didn't have any side pods. It was the no side pod concept, and everyone was like, "Oh God!" Blah, blah, blah. And Ross Brawn and the like and the technical team were like, "Well, we had a plan of what the new cars would look like, but we didn't think they looked like this." And they're the ones that wrote the bloody rules. And so I think we're going to have to go and do a bit more research, because we think it might be a loophole, but we're not sure. So we're going to go and find out if that's allowed or not. So sometimes it's sort of, there is a disparity, and even the technical team don't really know if something is allowed or not. So I feel like you're always going to get that kind of disparity in whatever motorsport.
It's where Gigi Dall'Igna and the ex-Aprilia man, now Ducati top guy, where he works it all out. I mean, you talk about Formula One. My favourite was the F hole, where you put your glove over the hole in the bodywork so that the aero works differently. Do you remember that?
No. F hole, F duct. The F duct, was that what it was?
There was a thing where you put your hand over it, and it changed because it was a manually operated aero thing. It meant that you could do it. I think, was it McLaren? I can't remember who had it, but somebody.
Yeah, well, that's what became DRS, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes, effectively it was, Pete. You're absolutely right. Bloody hell, Pete and Formula One knowledge.
Here we go. Let's let's not go down. Let's not go down the four-wheeled route. But
it was named after there was a letter in the sponsorship that had the hole in it that you put in.
Interesting. Oh, okay. I think I know what you mean. Well, I'm too young, but I also look at something like there was the Mercedes had this DAS system where you pulled the steering wheel back and suddenly the front two wheels kind of inverted, and it helped with aero and tire degradation. Amazing design, amazing technical thing. Of course, not allowed, illegal. Get rid of it for next year. And you're like, and you think in these pinnacle sports.
You talk about what Ducati have spent. The amount of money that gets spent on technical innovation that gets ruled out in the end. I mean, the bloody scoop that Yamaha had, that rear spoon, that scoop, for God knows how long. But it was supposed to be there to move the rain out of the way of the rear tyre, wasn't it, to keep it off? But Ducati worked that out a little bit better than that, and it became aero for Ducati. So suddenly Yamaha get the ump because their one only works for sort of rain purposes, whereas Ducati have now modified it so it's an aero piece. They said tyre cooling, I remember. Said it was a tyre cooling. It was a safety thing, but it was aero at the end of the day. I love all that. I love all that. It's prototype racing, and it should be like that. It should be like that. Pushing the boundaries.
Yeah,
I think
there's
we
definitely a pattern, isn't there, between those innovations you were saying there, where you take something that's banned in terms of being automatic, like a ride height system, like the wheels, and you make it rider operated. And so that's the loophole: is if you can get the rider to do it, as Keith said, even if it's a hand with a glove blocking something, if the human is doing it, it's hard to rule that out within the written rules, let's say. And so that's definitely an area where in four wheels, two wheels, they look for the loopholes. Is okay, that's banned if we do it automatically, but can we do it manually? So it then becomes rider operated, like the ride height system is. That's why they're able to do it. They couldn't have an automatic version because the rider operates it. It's fine.
They even
we'll get
banned
Danny
one-handed
Aldridge on.
riding. They even banned one-handed riding. You're on the throttle as fast as you can, and you grip the fork leg, the other one, take your hand off the handlebar to give you better aero. That's not allowed.
Yeah. Oh
You
wow.
see, you see flat
They're on
trackers.
it.
You watch flat trackers in America. They're all on, like them guys are mad anyway. But it's absolutely on the stop and one hand on the fork leg. You're not on the handlebar. You're trying to get as tucked in as you can and get the thing sliding 100 plus mile an hour sideways on the dirt with a barrier about from me to the screen. And of course, a lot of people took that on in road racing, but it was immediately ruled against. Do not take your hand off the handlebar, sir.
Never take your hand off the handlebar. You talk of Yamaha there. I think we'll get Danny Aldridge on next year and we'll have a big old chinwag in January and February in the early shows. But talk of Yamaha there. But 2023 is going to be a big year, I think, or needs to be a big year for Yamaha. A lot of things going on with them. It seems like the post-season testing wasn't the most positive that they wanted, certainly from the engine side of things that Fabio wanted. But also now talk of, they've lost their satellite team and now they want another one. And Rossi has weighed in and given his thoughts. Japanese manufacturers are still very much in trouble, it seems.
Well, I would say that they are. I mean, like the global situation is not conducive, is it, at the moment? But I mean, Yamaha, they lost performance at the test. They seemed to have it prior, but all of a sudden it disappeared when they were. I know Valencia. I mean, I never think Valencia is a great test track, to be honest with you. But there you go. We'll wait and see when we get to some of the faster tracks. But yeah, I mean, what happened? I think Yamaha are at sea. I mean, I think Quartararo was quite, what's the word, extrovert over what had happened. He was not happy in Valencia. You imagine your expectations. You've just done what you've done, finished as best you can, and the bike isn't performing. It isn't going forwards. Yamaha really have got to sort themselves out. And of course, as soon as you start pushing early season, if you've got something that's slightly different, that's made of different materials or whatever it is, by the time we get to the first round next year, which is a different round as normal, but that's it. You run what you brung from that moment onwards. If you've not got concessions, and Yamaha don't have, so the fact is that they are stuffed effectively. If they've not got the performance when we get to Sepang and the like, they're done.
Big surprise, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, even Cal right the way through the Valencia weekend, because he tested that engine at Jerez privately, didn't he, the week before? And the one thing everyone said about it was it had more power. Cal's concern was that they as in the Grand Prix, the full-time riders, Quartararo and Morbidelli, are always testing after a race weekend when the track is in great shape, loads of grip. And so he was a bit concerned about that. Obviously, when Cal's testing, it's often on a low grip track, which is where the Yamaha struggles, and he thinks that's a bit more representative. But the one thing everyone seemed to agree on was it had loads more power. Just as Quartararo said at Misano, turns out they tried this engine after the Barcelona test. They kept it quiet. That was the first version. They were happy with it then. Suddenly, they don't know why. They had no more power. So, yeah, lots of head scratching. The one thing was that they were sure that there must be something. There's some reason. There's something there that they
Software
can fix.
glitch.
Obviously, this is a trouble with a one-day test.
Yeah. You'd hope so.
Yeah,
this is the trouble with having a one-day test, isn't it? We said it could have been bad weather and it might rule it out. And, you've got one day, and if you have a bit of a hiccup that takes a bit more time to solve, that's it. And,
Yeah, but
the testing is done until at Sepang.
At least they've got time now to get through the winter and have a look for that hiccup. Whereas if it had rained at Valencia, they'd get to Valencia and have no power. That really would be to the wire. So Yamaha, I mean, it's glass half full for me. At least they know that they've got a problem, so they can deal with it over the winter until we get to Sepang. Let's hope they manage to do it, because we need Yamaha.
And Sepang is the big one, isn't it? I mean, that's where you need your final version of your engine, really. It's okay, there's another test afterwards, but the reality is the engine you have at Sepang, you can tune it a little bit, but you're not going to redesign it in time for the new year. So, yeah, Sepang is a big one for all of the teams, but especially those looking for more engine performance.
I had a few questions in. Lloyd is interested to hear what you think the challenges are if Yamaha are to add a satellite team for 2024. Will Dorna support them, or could they leave? Obviously, this comes in the wake of Lynn Jarvis confirming that after RNF has switched allegiances to Aprilia, they are on the lookout. And even the FIM president has said Valentino Rossi's VR46 team are rumoured. That has been denied. But certainly, Yamaha clearly want a satellite team here.
Well, they should have bloody well done it when Valentino was signing a deal with Ducati, shouldn't they? Really, instead of waiting until it all fell apart. I mean, it's one of those situations where I always think that Yamaha seem to be too little, too late with things. They just seem to be a little bit on the back foot all the time, which for a manufacturer of their standing seems odd to me. I never kind of work it out. I never can kind of get to the bottom of it. But finding a satellite team that is going to assist their full factory team isn't easy. It just isn't. I mean, okay, there's a lot of Suzuki guys floating out there at the moment, some good ones. So at least there is some personnel that are floating around at this moment in time. But will they want to take on a team that is clearly going to be second rate? Will they want to go into a Yamaha team? I'll bet you all the top guys that were at Suzuki have got contracts coming their way for next year in other teams, because you'd be stupid not to hire them. The knowledge that Suzuki have and the way that they've gone about their business has been exemplary. So all the top guys at Suzuki, I'd be massively surprised if they didn't all have good jobs by the time next year starts.
I think there's quite a lot of things going on behind the scenes here. I think that Luca Marmarini, if that's how you say his name, apologies if I've pronounced it wrong, but the ex-Ferrari Toyota engine designer, he's come in. I was speaking to Lynn about this. I mean, that's quite a big change to bring in an outside engineering consultancy like that to work on the engine and give them the power. Then you've got Tom O'Kane. Keith was just mentioning Suzuki. He's coming across from Suzuki. Lynn didn't want to talk too much about what he's going to do, but he made clear he's not replacing anyone. This is a new kind of group that Tom's going to head up, sort of performance engineering and that kind of thing. So that's another new thing that's happening. Cal was also saying that the test team, I think he said they had 27 members of staff at each test. And he's saying that it's much more in that the testing is much more in the hands or overseen by Lynn and Massimo Merigali, than in the past. And he thought that's a good thing. So it does seem that there's changes being made. Whether that was, let's say, triggered by the problems with this 22 engine. We remember a year ago, Fabio, he came close to being beaten by Bagnaia. He had no engine power. We were all expecting this increase for 22. And nothing happened. And it turns out that there was some sort of issue with the engine that they were planning to use. And so they ended up basically running not the same engine, but the performance-wise, it wasn't much difference, was it, for all of last year? Now, that seems to have been the trigger to say, okay, enough. Now we do need to make big changes here. We can't keep on like this. They'd had the valve problems, hadn't they, 2 years before? So it seems like there's stuff going on. Let's see, I think, where that takes us. But in terms of the satellite team, of course, Rossi and Yamaha, it's a long-running story, isn't it? Will it ever happen? It's so close to happening, but at the time, SRT had Petronas, didn't they? And this is just so that there's this awkward situation. Rossi's riding for Petronas. His team are also negotiating with Yamaha. So you've got Petronas talking to Yamaha, Rossi's VR46 team talking to Yamaha. Eventually, I think they just decided it's too awkward, because you imagine if Rossi's team pinched the Yamahas off Petronas, which is the team he's currently riding for in 21. So it was just agreed between them, look, we'll continue with Petronas, well-backed team, the most successful Yamaha satellite team at that time. So everything makes sense until Petronas withdraw about a month later, doesn't it? And then suddenly, he's saying, hang on, you probably should have gone with the other team, shouldn't you? But by then it's too late. Rossi's team had then done the deal with Ducati, and that's where they are now. It's a 3-year deal. So, they've got another year to run on that. I don't know. I mean, the obvious, the teams that are most likely would seem to be VR46, clearly, and then Grassini, because their contract expires at the end of 23. So if Yamaha want a team for 24, and we assume that VR46 will see out their Ducati contract, as they say they will, in that story you mentioned there, Harry, it could only be Grassini. I asked Grassini, but they just said, we're under discussions with, I don't want to name any teams.
I mentioned earlier that we're all embedded in the paddock, but unfortunately we're not embedded enough to know what happened with the RNF thing and the Petronas thing. I mean, it was a sudden knee-jerk situation where Petronas pulled out. Razvan Razali seems to have had a little bit of pushback in the paddock of recent times. CEO of the Petronas and then RNF team, former CEO of Sepang International Circuit. So he's well embedded in things. I keep using the word embedded, but somehow something happened. Certainly, his choice of personnel, there was a little bit of unhappiness regarding who he hired and who he fired. And we ended up in a situation where only having MotoGP, the Moto3, Moto2 projects expired. So I don't know. I wonder whether Razlan is treading on toes somewhere there as well. I wonder whether that's having any effect over the overall situation.
He might be getting more pain as well, I think, because with you, who are part of the title sponsorship of that, I heard they've gone bust. So I think he's going to have to try and find some more sponsorship.
With you.
Well, quite right.
Yeah, so at Valencia, Crypto Data is the new. They're not only a sponsor though; they are actually a shareholder of the team now. There was a presentation over the weekend. Yeah, so that's where, to answer your question, Harry, you're exactly right there. So with you have gone filling this hole of Crypto Data, which really we only saw. I think they backed the Austrian Grand Prix. They were title sponsor of that. They're not cryptocurrency. It was pointed out to us because that was the first thing we all thought. It's sort of cybersecurity and that kind of thing. But so they are not only sponsoring the RNF team, but they're actually shareholders in the team with Razlan now. Yeah, remaining companies. So yeah, that's, to answer your question, Harry. That's where the sort of the funding is coming from for the team next year.
Well, that seems like positive news then. Talking of sponsors, it's time to do our sponsor plug to interrupt this show ever so briefly. We're about halfway through now. And we're sponsored this week by the wonderful people at NordVPN. If you like us, and whenever you leave your country and get frustrated that you can't watch certain things, both Pete and Keith are out in Thailand right now. They might well be having this issue because they're not shown wherever you are. NordVPN is what you need. It allows you to switch your virtual location to a country that is showing what you want to watch. And yes, that includes MotoGP, World Superbikes, BSB, and loads more. So now, wherever you are in the world, you'll never miss out on watching live motorbike action again, or just your favorite TV program. You can grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/crashmotogp to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 months for free. It's completely risk-free with your personal information encrypted with the highest security protocols. And if you're not happy with anything, NordVPN have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/crashmotogp to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan and 4 months for free. So that is something for you to do. And while you go and do that, 2023 is going to be a big year, but it's time to maybe look a little bit back at 2022. It seems everybody is doing their various awards. So I thought, well, maybe we should do our own podcast 2022 awards. And I've sent you these in advance, chaps. So hopefully you've had a little bit of a chance to think about your answers. I certainly have. Number one, the first award. We really dressed up for the occasion, didn't we? So we should have stuck a tie on, maybe. Best. I know. Well, none of us went for Christmas jumpers either, did we? So we really messed this up. This is the closest Christmas thing I've got. The first award in the Crash 2022 MotoGP Podcast Awards, Best Rider. Keith.
Can only be one. He won the championship, Pecco Bagnaia. At the end of the day, for me...
Oh, that's boring, isn't it?
It is very, very... it gets better as we move through this list, but it can only be...
Okay.
It gets much better as we move through the list. I'm sorry, but I looked at it and I thought, that is so bloody boring and that is so not me. But Bagnaia has taken in something like, I don't know, huge amount of Grand Prix to get to where he's got to. So I have to say he's number one. At the end of the day, the guy who wins the MotoGP championship has got to be number one for me.
Pete, the same?
Unfortunately, yes. But honestly, you could make a case for any of the top four, I think. I actually think this year it's harder than normally. Normally, you've got the guy who wins the championship and the guy who was second, haven't you? And maybe if the guy who finished second, his bike broke down 5 or 6 times, you could say, well, he deserved it. But I mean, in this case, honestly, I think the top four you can make a case for. It depends. You look at things like performance relative to their teammates, DNFs, as we say, and all that. And also, I think sort of shock value, as in, who outperformed what you expected them to do at the start of the year. And I think that's where the guys in third and fourth, Bastianini and LH, score pretty highly there. Who would have thought?
You're ahead of the game. That's coming up in a little while.
Pete's getting all of his answers now.
But anyway, yeah. Oh, okay. Bagnaia. I mean, for me, it's the reasons that Keith says. It came down to a 3-round showdown, didn't it? After Thailand, they were basically level on points. It was a 3-race showdown, and unfortunately, Quattararo, he made those mistakes at Phillip Island. He lost 16 points there, and he lost the title by 17 to Bagnaia. So, I mean, for me, that's it. I mean, there's very little between them, but I think at the end of the day, Bagnaia was the fastest guy this year over the season, and yeah, got the job done.
I would agree, but I have gone for Enea Bastianini as my best rider.
Yeah.
I think and Pete's already basically explained it. Performance relative to Zarco, earning the promotion to the factory team, pipping Aleix right at the end in the final race to get third in the championship. For me, obviously Bagnaia was exceptional, but for me, love an underdog, and I'm not boring, so I'm going for Enea Bastianini. Yeah,
because you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, everything you get.
Excellent.
Okay,
right. Next, best manufacturer, please. Keith, we'll come back to you first.
Well, it comes under the same thing, doesn't it? The most innovative, the most incredibly unusual looking motorcycle, the performance of the motorcycle, it's so different from everything else out on the grid. You've got to go with Ducati. Boring again.
Pete, boring as well. Boring doubled.
Yeah, but with Aprilia close second.
Oh no! Don't you come in with your whatever you've got second.
Well, yeah, because and it took them a long time, didn't it, for Ducati? Let's face it, that GP22, it looked like in winter testing, let's say at Res November 21, the perfect bike that was even better according to Bagnaia. I mean, we thought it was going to completely flatten the season, but it didn't win until round 6, did it? So, but once it got on form, I think it's got to be Ducati.
Well, you see, that's where I mark them down, and I actually think, the amount of bikes Ducati had, they should have absolutely been on it sooner and won this. So my best team, my best manufacturer is Aprilia. So I'm going for them because they surprised, they were as consistent as could be, and they weren't used to being up there. So I think, given all the extenuating circumstances for me, they were the best manufacturer.
Have a look round, Pete. I think he's got a camera. He's looking at your notes.
It's not my fault. He's going with the boring answers. Okay, cool. We're getting the boring ones out of the way first. Best team now. So we've done manufacturer. Best team. I could just answer for you, shall we? You got both going Ducati, Lenovo, factory team? No. Oh, I speak too soon. Yeah. Okay, Keith, go on then. Back to you.
Suzuki.
Oh.
Rescuing what they did from a retired team to motivate themselves to finish in the way they did in the closing stages of the year. They go about their business in such a lovely way. That motorbike is a beautiful motorbike. It looks like a motorbike, unlike the Ducati, of course. The team itself seems really gelled, close. It seems like a proper team to me. So I think Suzuki definitely, for me.
Red Bull KTM.
Oh.
Now, second in the team's championship. With a bike that was fourth in the constructors, the riders were 6th and 10th. They were the only ones to score points in every race. I just think that's the shock when people look back on this season, in 10 years' time, and they look at the World Championship standings. Second, Red Bull KTM in the team's championship. But it just shows that they got the most from the bike. From squeezed everything out of it. No, obviously no big enough technical problems to rule out their riders from a lot of races, or certainly not both in the same race. So but they are, for me, I think even Brad Binder said he was shocked when he realised that they got second at Valencia with his, that podium that he got was just enough to snatch it from Aprilia, and poor old Aprilia had the opposite, didn't they? They had a double nightmare with the technical problem at Valencia. But I think for me that making what they can with their equipment, shall we say.
I can see Harry looking at his notes there. He was looking at his notes as you were speaking, Pete, looking at what he was going to change it to.
Well, no, because when I was looking up this morning, I double checked who finished where, and I was surprised. I was like, Red Bull KTM was second. I was a bit shocked, and then I'm just looking now. I was like, the guy who won twice for them, Oliveira, is the one they binned off as well. So you just think, and KTM management is something we've talked about this year, and still perplexes me to this day. I have gone for the non-boring. I've gone for the boring one this time, actually. So I went for Ducati because I thought I felt bad that I hadn't. They did have to win something. So for me, they were the best team. I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but it's hard not to like you say, Red Bull, KTM, Suzuki, both fair shouts. Now, best team principal. Now, I know this could be a little bit up in the air because there's team managers and things like that. So, anyone from management, I think, will say. But who have you got?
I think Paolo Gibatti, a man that's of his age, that never has a hair out of place after being on a flight for 14 hours. He is so Italian, it is actually scary. And he always looks absolutely, like the epitome of a suave Italian manager. So I'm going to go with Paolo.
Paolo. Okay. Pete?
Massimo Rivola.
Oh,
okay.
Aprilia. So, not many, people coming across from F1 and likewise going the other way, MotoGP F1, not normally have a great time of things, do they? But he got there in 2019, and I mean, look at the form of Aprilia in recent years and the upward trajectory. He's also put the satellite team together. He got new contracts with Aleix and Maverick signed. Got Oliveira signed up on the RNF team as well, along with Raul Fernandez. Oliveira is already looking like a good decision, isn't he? So, yeah, I think I'll go for Massimo there.
Fair enough. I went with Razali. Now, hear me out. Just because I just think that he had it all thrown at him very late in the day. As we mentioned just before, the Petronas situation, suddenly the switch, we're dealing with Yamaha and then switching to Aprilia just now and then having to get new sponsorship and things like that. I think he dealt with that well. I think actually the riders were, the likes of, obviously, Dovi was exceptional, but past his day, getting Cal Crutchlow in and having Darren Binder and doing that, making that brave call to bring him up from Moto3, I actually think was a good call in the end. I think, as we've discussed, he's unfairly going down to Moto2, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. I think considering all the things he had to overcome, that's my reason for putting Razlan as the best team principal, I would say. So,
I think we should just give a mention, Livio Supo.
Yeah.
Yes.
A quick one, but he's now been a winning team manager with 3 different factories. And we always talk about the riders. We're still waiting for the first rider to do it, aren't we? But, no one, since Rossi, we thought if he'd have won with Ducati, he would have won with 3 brands. But no one's done it yet. Vinales and Jack Miller will be trying next year. They've got a chance. But Livio now, I think he's the only guy, as far as I know, a team manager that's and with all the things going on, as Keith mentioned, behind the scenes, to hold that team together when you've just been dropped in as team manager at the start of that year. So I think, I think he deserves a mention as well.
And he's got a voice you wouldn't argue with.
Do we know his plans yet? Is he doing anything for next year at the moment, or we don't know anything? No,
he hasn't announced
nothing.
As far as I know. No.
Well, I'm sure he will find somewhere within motorsport. Okay. Best haircut from the year.
Pete.
The most.
Pete.
Pete.
When I saw this question, Harry, I was like, I should. What's the word? What's it? Abstain. What's it when you don't vote?
Yeah.
I think that's what. Or no comment.
Yeah, no comment.
I'll tell you what this reminded me of.
Not applicable.
Valencia. Yeah, Valencia. I went to the race, sharing an Airbnb house. I'm the last one arriving, so as normally happens when you're the last one. If anyone's forgotten anything, they message you. I get a message from Neil Morrison. Pete, can you pick this up from the airport for me? They should have it in boots. Sends a picture. What's this? I'm zooming in. Matte clay. I'm like, what's it? Is he doing pottery? No. I realise it's some sort of hair gel thing. I'm like, Neil, can you imagine the confusion on people's faces when I go to buy this? And he assured me that this was a genuine request once he'd stopped laughing, that it was a genuine request. And so I did indeed buy it. Thankfully, it was one of those self-service computer things.
Oh, thank God.
Flash it past. But that's my only hair-related story for the season, I'm afraid. I shall hand over to you two, who are far more qualified in the hair care department.
Well, only just.
To judge,
I think you need to pull your toupee down a bit, Keith.
Yeah.
It's gone up.
I've got more of a
It's risen
placement than a bloody haircut.
I don't know why I decided this should be a question. Bezzecchi. Fair enough.
I know why you decided it, because you can take the piss out of us too.
But there was that. There was, yeah, true. There was that, but there was also. I feel like there was a lot of good hair. I don't know. I had to think about this. I went for Darren Binder. I thought he's got a luscious set of locks on him. I thought so, but Mazecki is another good one. I'd
Well, I
say.
went for Bezzecchi because he reminds me of Simoncelli. That's why.
Yeah, the hair is
I should go for Morbidelli and I think Brad Binder out of solidarity, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
Because I think they both have, so those would be my guys.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the best haircuts that we think. Okay, best overtake.
Can only be one.
I think we've all got to be on the same page on that
Yeah.
one. Absolutely. How could you not? Apparently, in the MotoGP end of season awards, that one didn't win.
Didn't it?
What?
No, I can't remember, but apparently that didn't win. And I went, what? What in what world? It might not be overtake. It might be action of the year or something like that. And so maybe got pipped because it wasn't. I don't know. But
Yeah,
I was surely.
Perfect, wasn't it? I mean, and those two guys who were hard breakers anyway.
Yeah.
And he didn't run wide. He didn't clatter into anyone. The only one I could even think of to even compare, to put in to think about, let's say, was Bastianini's overtake on Bagnaia for the win at Aragon, and that was just because of if it had gone wrong, what was at stake there? Yeah. If he'd have wiped them both out. But technically, it was nowhere near Aleix's pass there.
No. Biggest disappointment of the year, Keith?
This is easy. Morbidelli.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, who are you going for, Pete?
Well, I've got the 2022 Honda for a start.
Yeah, fair.
But then if you want to go for a rider, I actually think Joan Mir. I think for him not to get a podium this year, I thought he was going to be up there fighting for the championship. So.
And I went actually for Jorge Martin. I was really disappointed. I thought he could have done better. I thought, losing out on that factory seat, it was his own fault. But interesting, 3 different answers there. I like that. Overachiever of the year.
You've already mentioned him, Enea Bastianini.
Enea.
Yeah, I mean on an older bike for Grassini. I mean, just superb. Snatches 3rd place in the championship, pushes Aleix back and forth. Pete was right at the top 4. It was a superb year from that point of view. But Enea Bastianini, and I love the way he goes about his job, and I love the way Grassini go about their job. And when you consider, what's happened in the team over the last couple of years, it's fantastic.
It's a really nice story, isn't it, Pete?
Quartararo, I went for just because of the gap between him and the other Yamahas. I mean, was it 248 to about 40, I think, for Morbidelli in 19th.
And I went for Marc Marquez, best Honda, even after missing nearly bloody half the season, working with one arm. I think that all calls for overachieving, even if it is Marc Marquez. What was your heartbreaking moment of the year, Keith?
Injuries aside, I've avoided injuries and situations that are going to tug on the heartstrings. Generally, I want to avoid that. Not being negative, but Suzuki leaving suddenly is a heartbreak. When they've got a motorcycle and a team clearly capable of winning races, and they did after the announcement that they were leaving, I just think that is, not just my heart. I mean, the whole bloody team's heart must have been broken. Terrible.
Yeah, I think that all broke our hearts.
Yeah, that's the one I've got as well. And just to sum up the heartbreak story, though, maybe to add to it, Valencia on the Sunday. So Fedi and Alberto were the press guys at Suzuki. So our first line of contact, if you like, with the Suzuki team. They'd been around after warm up to say goodbye to everyone. And then Nicky Kovacs and a few others, they'd done a really nice thing. They'd organised for some bottles of Cava, and we all sort of signed them. And then they got the Suzuki guys called up at the end of the day, and they didn't know anything about this, And they were presented with them in the media room, and we all gave them a round of applause. And the poor guys were just in pieces. I mean, they were just so, it had been an emotional day as it was, saying goodbye to everyone, winning their last race, and then this, which I've never seen anything like that really by the media, in all my time. And they deserved it. They've done a great job. And it really did show, though, just what a loss it'll be. And what a shame.
It's a loss in social media as well. There's no team that embraced social media as well as Suzuki. Some of their tweets, some of their social media interactions were just superb. Their whole team, including, their digital team that were working on stuff for everybody. I mean, I can't believe that team has been, Hamamatsu, what the bloody hell are you doing?
Exactly, Keith. I just think. Sorry, you're going to say something, but
No?
if you're a racing team and you've got, well, a company and you've got something that's world class, you don't bin it, whatever it is. You just don't, we always hear, don't we, that racing guys like us, you guys don't understand the business side. You guys just want to go racing and that's all it's about for you, but you don't get the business. I think this is an example of the business people not understanding the racing side and not understanding the value of what they had beyond just the numbers they were writing on the check. And I think it was such a massive shame. And as you say, there's people in that team that don't have jobs. I think a lot of the crew have. I think almost all the MotoGP teams are going to have one or two guys from Suzuki, and then some will be in Moto2 and things. But there are definitely some people who still want. They were part of the winning team at the final race in Valencia, and they're out of a job. Madness.
That is a good heartbreaking moment. Mine was Aleix finishing lap early at his home in Spain. That was
Good
mine.
one. That was a good one.
That's mine. And then that cost him certainly third in the championship for sure, and may well could have got him up to second if things had turned out differently. The best race of the season. This is hard, I think. The best race of the season.
It's kind of not that hard, really. I mean, it's interesting. The International Race Teams Association, IRTA, voted, because all the teams vote for their best Grand Prix of the year. You know which one it was?
No.
One of the ones I hate the most, Le Mans.
Was it?
Le Mans was voted by IRTA as the best Grand Prix of the year. But I'm not going there, obviously. I'm going to Assen.
Yeah.
Assen is mine.
Assen. Yeah. Pete?
Phillip Island I went for.
Yeah, I can understand that too.
Yeah. And I actually went for Valencia because I thought, Suzuki winning, the ding-dong battle between Pecco and Fabio actually, touching bikes, contact.
It probably was the best Valencia for some time. Because Valencia normally is awful. So it was, I was expecting it to be rubbish, and it was actually very, very good race meeting.
I think that's what leaped up because you have such low expectations. Okay, the best livery of the year, in your humble opinions?
Well, for me, I think that too many bikes look like some 60-year-old bloke on a cycle in Lycra with his codpiece sticking out. All colour and zigzag. I mean, I've got a particular dislike of old blokes on push bikes getting in the way and shouting at me every time I drive past them. So I've gone with Grassini, a proper grown-up colour, proper grown-up looking motorcycle.
I went for them as well.
Good. You're a man of taste.
I went for Suzuki. But I did also, I considered Grassini. And the funny thing about the Grassini one was, it was kind of like Marmite. People either loved it or hated it when it was unveiled. But then it's like always, if it's quick, people start liking it more, don't they? So when it won at the first race, it suddenly looked better.
Yeah.
Every time it won, it started looking better. Yeah. And I think, So I mean, it ticks all the boxes because, it was a unique design and it was quick.
Yeah.
So, I can...
Okay.
And really, it's a strange one, isn't it? It's the teams that are, let's say, the least commercially successful and have the least number of sponsors to fit in. They've got the blankest canvas, haven't they, for this kind of thing? So you end up with Suzuki. X-Star is just their in-house oil brand. And okay, they had a bit of Monster to fit in, and Grassini, unfortunately, didn't have a title sponsor either. So they had more freedom, both of them, to do their own thing. So...
No, I think it was that Grassini one especially. Both of them were beautiful. Okay, last two awards that we're handing out. The worst track of the year. Keith's had some great insiders guides this year. Some have been absolutely terrible.
If we stick with the track, not the performance this year, I'm still going to stay with Valencia. If we stick, the performance this year was good, but I think Valencia for the final round for me is a slightly difficult one to sell. Although it was absolutely packed out. It was a great meeting this year. So I feel slightly cruel that I picked Valencia as that. But I just think it's just a concrete canyon. Although they've tidied it up a fair bit now. Got a nice little orange grove in the middle, and we've got a couple of little lakes and stuff like that. So it's softened. And we've got, Ricardo Tormo, because it's called the Circuit Ricardo Tormo. It's got a lot of history, but I can't love Valencia. Sorry.
Yeah, I went for Valencia as well. The same reason, the layout. I mean, okay, that penultimate corner, the one that's sort of over the rise into the last corner, that one's pretty useful, especially you get to stand on the inside. It's quite exciting there. But the rest of the track, and you just think, if it wasn't the title decider. If it was sort of in the middle of the season, that's where it was a great event because it was the title decider this year, and there's loads of fans there, and it was a fantastic atmosphere, and they put on a great event, no doubt about it. But if we're talking about circuit or track, as in the actual layout, I think it would have to be the worst.
Yeah, I think I'd say the same on that. Although, what was the track? Was it Indonesia this year that was like literally breaking up as they were going round? That, in terms of
somehow what happens in Southeast Asia generally is that they tend to don't work to the same rule as everyone else that lays tarmac. Like you need a period of curing. It needs to be down a little while to cure. But they lay it the week before and expect it to perform almost immediately. And of course it don't.
Well, I think we're pretty unanimous on that one, despite tracks literally breaking up. And the best track, final award for the best track of the year.
Well, I have a struggle with this one as well because it wasn't the best race meeting of the year. They overpriced all the tickets, and so we didn't have a crowd there. Obviously, it's the first year that Valentino Rossi hasn't been there. But Mugello as a track is still my favourite track. Phillip Island and Mugello are neck and neck. I suppose I really should have gone for Phillip Island. I'm sure Pete will have done. But Mugello has been... I've had a love affair with Tuscany all my life. And I love where it is. I love the atmosphere that's there. And I love the track. It's a great track. So Mugello for me.
And yes, I went for Phillip Island. Keith I mean, for me, what swayed it that way was that obviously we haven't been there since 2019. So there'd been a big break where we hadn't been to Phillip Island and most of these flyaways. So it was just great to be back there, and thankfully good weather for the race, exciting race. Yeah, I mean that one for me.
The only downside of Phillip Island is it's in the state of Victoria. If you ever had a nanny state that wants to make sure you do everything by the book, don't step over that line, don't go 1 kilometre an hour over the speed limit, don't drink in public, don't make a noise in a bar. It's horrendous. No wonder all the Aussies come to Earl's Court.
Not on Keith's list. I was going to go for Phillip Island as well, just because that was the first time I think I'd properly witnessed what the racing was like at Phillip Island, like sort of firsthand watching and working on it. So that was a cool race, and it just looked. The surroundings were so beautiful as well. I think so. I'd go
freezing bloody
Phillip
cold
Island as well. Is it that time of year? Yeah,
unbelievable. I mean, like you
really?
can change from being 15 degrees to 0 in a heartbeat, and the tires go from grip to no grip
to nothing.
As soon as it blows back off of Tasmania, that's your next stop, Tasmania in the south. You are proper south down there.
Okay. Oh, we have to take a trip out there. That's the podcast 2022 awards done. We have decided. Let us know if you agree, your awards as well. We'd like to hear in the comments. Now, we are running out of time, so we're going to finish with, we've got some listener questions, but also I thought this could be fun. For next year, if you had free choice from this year's MotoGP, Moto2 and Moto3 grids, what engine would you pick? Who would be your number one rider? Who would be your number two rider? And who would be your team principal? Let's go to Pete first on this one, I think.
I suppose most of it is the engine will be Ducati for the reasons that I said before. So I suppose to be consistent, rider one, I'll go Marc Marquez.
Yeah.
Rider two, Fabio.
Huh.
Well, that's a cop-out, isn't it?
And team principal, again, be consistent, I'd have to go for Rivola, having said that he was the best. So, yes.
Right. Well, that was predictable.
Otherwise, my previous answers don't make any sense.
Where was your reserve rider? Who was your reserve rider?
Oh, reserve rider.
So reserve meant what? A stat or test rider?
The test rider. Or someone who would step in / who you'd give a few wildcard rides.
Cal then. Cal Crutchlow.
Oh.
Cal. Okay. Oh, I forgot to put a test.
You've been reading my notes, Pete. Ducati.
Right, go on.
Ducati, Marquez, Quartararo, Cal as a test rider, and Ken Karachi as the technical team man. Because I think you need a good technical team man, and I like the way Ken goes about his job. He's from Suzuki, obviously, and he's always centre stage with this stuff. So I think Ken would be a good shout as a top team man.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, well, I went for Ducati as my engine, and I thought outside the box here. I could have just gone Marquez Fabio. That would have been nice and easy, wouldn't it? I went for Rider 1, Aleix Espargaro, experienced hand. Rider 2, Pedro Acosta, young rookie, eager to please. My team principal is Livio Supo, and my reserve rider, having just thought of it now, is Cal Crutchlow.
Well, we'll see you
And
back
that's
in the
who I'm
paddock.
going for.
We'll see you back in the paddock.
Yeah.
You won't be in Parc Ferme.
We'll see. We'll see. Now, quick questions. Let's end with some questions because we had some come in last minute. What's your favourite ever race? Stephen Proctor has asked that question.
Moto 3, Phillip Island, 3 years ago.
Oh, now that is
29
niche.
I think it was 2019. Moto 3. It was insane.
Who won it?
I nearly blew my larynx out.
Who won? Who won it?
Do you know what? I can't remember. But it could have been anyone. Could have been anyone.
It was so good. Yeah, fair enough. Pete,
I didn't
favourite
look it
ever
up.
race?
I'm not like you, Harry. I'm not looking it up.
I'm always looking it up. 2019 Moto 3. It's so niche. Okay, right. Find out who won that. Pete, who's your best ever race?
2006 Estoril.
Oh,
Okay.
An ultimate round. The drama there with Nicky Hayden being taken down by Danny, and then Tony Elias winning the race from Rossi. Those points that then denied Rossi, as it turned out at the last round. So much went on in that race, and it went right down to the wire. Kenny Roberts third for the KR team. I think he might even have done a bit of an elation, got the lap wrong, and maybe he might have won if it had been one lap less. But yeah, that one stands out. There was another couple was. The Phillip Island one, 2015, which had a load of overtakes in, and there was an Assen round that also had the record number, and I can't remember what it is because I haven't had a chance to look this up.
That was the one.
Yeah, those would be the other.
That was the one where Rocky rammed the rear end of another bike, wasn't it? I seem to remember that one. In the run down to the final couple of corners when. Again, I had no.
With Gibbernout, yes. Okay, that's another one. Yeah, I was actually not. Yeah, so, but yeah, 06 Estoril, the penultimate round of the 2006 season. Yeah.
Nice. In that same vein, Indiana has asked, what's your pick for greatest rider of all time? Really easy questions to end this show on.
Yeah, that is a very, very difficult one.
Again, it comes down to how do you define greatest, isn't it? It's a bit like best rider. Are you talking results? Are you talking the whole package, what they brought to the sport?
Well, they want your opinion.
Talent,
in that case,
raw talent.
You can only go one person in that case. If we're talking about a global icon, if we're talking about someone that introduced more people to the sport than anybody else, 9 world championships across so many years. 43 years old when he packed it up. I mean, he can only really go with. I mean, Marquez is he's next. If Marquez manages to come back next year, he will be the man that's going to be the GOAT. If he carries on, if his injury doesn't restrict him come 2023, then I think he may overtake. But does he overtake on a personality basis? No, he doesn't. That's where you've got Rossi again. And if you go back to Mike Hailwood, the old school days of things like that, do you include John McGuinness in this? A really good lad, bloody funny, and does what he does on the Isle of Man that no one else can do. You can broaden this out to some absolutely outstandingly brilliant riders. But I think Rossi, as a worldwide icon, as well as results, for me, it's got to be him.
Yeah, for all round, I would say Rossi. If you're just talking about the most talented people that I've seen,
Casey Stoner.
Marquez.
Casey Stoner. It would be Casey Stoner for me. I've never seen anybody ride a motorbike as good as Casey Stoner. You can talk about Lorenzo, you can talk about Marquez, but Casey Stoner was just superlative. I mean, the hairs are going up on my arm just talking about him. I just
amazing.
Rate Casey so highly, and I respect the way he walked away the way he did. So Stoner, from a riding perspective, is my top man.
All right. Well, Indiana, thank you for a very good question. Okay, quick fire answers, please. Alex Marquez on a Ducati, fame or fizzle?
Alex Marquez on a Ducati. I think fame. I'm going to go with fame.
Fame.
Again, what's fame?
We're going fame. Okay.
I think he's going to go well on it.
Okay. KTM, Binder to the top with wingman Miller?
No, Miller to the top. I think Binder will raise his game. I'm
Pete?
hoping he does because I rate Jack.
Yeah, it's a close one, isn't it? Yeah. I think Miller might just edge it on experience, having experience of lots of different bikes. But I think Brad's going to be tough to beat.
Okay. Dennis has asked, will Honda pull something out of the bag and let Mark compete next year?
Well, it's not about letting him compete; it's whether they've got anything for him to compete with.
Well, yeah, I think, yeah.
I mean, I would say that it can't get much worse. So on that basis, it's got to be better than it was this year. And Mark was already, well, he nearly won in Phillip Island, didn't he? I mean, 0.2 from victory at Phillip Island. So yeah, I mean, I expect Mark to be winning races next year if he's healthy.
Honda have gone through their bad period.
Last two we've got. Will the fall of Suzuki bring the rise of BMW from World Superbikes?
No.
Okay. And finally, do you think Aprilia will be more of a contender next year?
Yes, I do. Personally, I think they will be. I think that they learned so much this year. They lost momentum at the end of the year. Some of that was Alesi's fault. Some of that was team cock-ups. They made too many technical mistakes, I think, in the last few Grand Prix. And that cost them dearly. It cost them at least a third place in the championship. So I think that once they got these new guys on board, they'll iron out that management side of things that basically keep the thing consistent. So I think they were just a bit, I won't say unlucky because you make your own luck. There's no luck involved in any of this. But they did make a couple of cock-ups that they could have done without.
Yeah, definitely. They're going to have more data, aren't they, with the satellite team? The only question mark is this concessions, how they'll deal with that. But I think we should point out Aleix was the only, well, not the only guy, but one of the only guys that didn't fall in a race this year.
Which is amazing.
He made obviously he made a cock up, didn't he, in Barcelona?
Yeah.
But he didn't actually fall. I think Marini is maybe the only other guy. He had a technical issue, I think, at Japan because he finished every race in his career. But that's one thing we should say about Aleix. You know, he didn't make, in a year where we saw a lot of mistakes by the guys at the top of the championship, Aleix didn't fall in a race.
No, but he did finish one lap too early in one of them. That's harsh. I like Aleix. We're done. That's it. 2022 MotoGP podcast done. Season 2, tick in the box. Thank you guys, as ever, for giving up your time. And thank you for listening and watching all season long. It's been an absolute joy to have you with us. Let us know everything in the comments. As I said right at the top of the show, live shows, would you want to come? Let us know. And in the meantime, Crash.net will be staying updated all throughout the winter and off season. So for all the latest news and analysis, keep a look on the website. Keep your questions, thoughts and opinions coming in all the usual ways. Leave us a review wherever you get your podcast and we will leave it there. But I believe our wonderful editor, Adrian, the man you never see, has collated some of our best bits from the year. And by that, I mean absolute worst bits, all the bits that we've expressly asked him to edit out. So all of our mistakes and bits just that we don't include. So Merry Christmas and thank you, Adrian. Happy holidays to you. Enjoy some well-deserved time off, but if you're working through, more power to you. But from myself, Harry Benjamin, from Pete McLaren and from Keith Ewan, we shall see you back in 2023. Bye-bye.
Happy Christmas. Even though he's Marc Marquez. You know, I can see it. It's going to be quite different. I think he's going to have quite a struggle with it. I'm going to have to cut that just there because I've just got to answer this door.
I thought I heard a knock at the door.
Is it Pecco?
Is it Pecco? He's really
He's
not
like, hang
happy.
on a minute, Keith. Yeah.
Or actually, we should get Pecco on. He clearly knows who we are now. All right, well, funny.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Sorry about that.
Well, anything good?
I had to let someone in.
It wasn't Pecco.
No. Pecco's camping out in my back garden. He's camped out the back there, and he likes me so much now. He's Airbnb. He's staying at my house during Silverstone. Yeah, and it's confirmed you are tall. You walk past our commentary position. I was on the second floor, and you could still look in. So yeah. Harry is a tall fella. Yeah, the festival.
Kenny Roberts, not Rogers. Roberts. You bring him up.
Highlight. I think it's that 2008 helmet where he had the face stuck on the top. Yeah, the scream. That's very good, Keith.
Someone screenshot that immediately. Temperatures soaring, particularly here in the UK over the next couple of days. If you hear any buzzing in the background, that's my fan.
If it wasn't improving, he would have left after 1 or 2 years. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we'll keep you updated with all the progress on that. Keith has had enough, clearly. He doesn't want to be here anymore. For those who are listening, he's just walked off. I think Pecco needs a cup of tea. I think it's tea time for Pecco. And Keith's off to making a cup of tea. Maybe by the power of editing, he might suddenly appear. Then we'll be back with you next week. He's back just in time for the end. Any closing words, Keith?
I'm looking forward to Silverstone coming up. It's scorching hot here. That was my air conditioner just being delivered. I do apologise, folks, but I'm getting raged at by my office at the moment because it's about 40 degrees in here, and so we now have a new air conditioner.
That is more than acceptable.
Yeah.
As it's the Monday after the British Grand Prix, where finally all of us three met in person for the first time. It was a brilliant weekend of two-wheeled action. Questions, though, will be asked.